it's officially a good evening. So it's just 7 minutes. So good evening everyone. So basically I'm talking on influence on by Rigveda, Vedic gods and Vaishnava art on copper horns and anthropomorphism. I'm a research scholar at Delhi University and I'm working as a junior project fellow in NCERT. So if it's working fine, then what I can do is it's not working. So I have to shift it. Shall I do that?
Next.
So before beginning, so it's like what exactly are the copper horns and what are anthropomorphic figures? So basically I'm dealing with the 2nd century object. So basically a copper horn object is an assemblage which is made up of, obviously it's a copper. So and it has been majorly found in North India and specifically to the regions of the Ganga Yamuna Tapa. And this has been found particularly in the parts of UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, Central Himalayas and specifically in some parts of West Bengal or Bihar and Orissa and finally in the Madhya Pradesh. Since there are lots of copper horns objects like we have harpoons, sail, and we have lots of which has been already mentioned, antenna cord, hook cord, bar sail, and double-sided arcs and everything. But my research interest is on looking into the anthropomorphic figures. So you'll know how anthropomorphic figures looks like, and before that we should know what exactly these are. So it has been first noticed in the 20th century by some scholars, and it has been theorized that first it has been one of the Harappan refusers, which has been found in the Ganga Valley, or it might be belonging to the Vedic Aryans, or it has been originally from India itself, and or it can be the ancestors of the Mundas. So these are the anthropomorphic figures, which has been on the, I guess if it's right, it's on the right side. And these are the hypotheses which has been put forth by the different scholars. Like V.S. Smith has been mentioned that these anthropomorphic figures are a symbol of a good omen. On the other hand, D.H. Gordon says that it is an all-purpose tool. On the other hand, Stella has said that it's a figure of men. And the most important one, the D.P. Agrawal, who says that it is a missile, while P. Mitra says that it's a primitive object of a magic or a cult significance. And so you can read it out like then P.K. Agrawal says it's as a Srivastava symbol, P.K. Das says it as a thunderbolt, while A.M.N. Deshpande says it's a Vajra, K.N. Dikshit says that it is an object of worship, and B.R. Archin says it is some kind of ritual figures, and R.C. Agrawal says it has been object associated with fertility and prosperity, and P.K. Agrawal again says that it is a token of mother goddesses because he already mentioned about the Srivastava, and then K.P. Nautilia says that it is a kind of a weapon or an object of ritual significances. K.S. Shukla says it's an image of Shiva, and please, I just forgot the diacritics because it was not possible. So, and then the last, the most important is R.C. Gaur, who says it's a personified deity. So mainly, out of these 15 hypotheses, we can note it very clearly that most of them are talked about as a ritualistic purposes. So we can say that 80% of the anthropomorphic figures for the ritual purposes. But one of the most interesting was the D.P. Agrawal, who said it's a missile and tumora. So since I'm not going into the details, so I'm just looking into the Vedic gods and goddesses. So I'll be just focusing on the early influence of Vedic gods on the copper horns and specifically to the anthropomorphic figures. Second, I will be looking into identifying these anthropomorphic figures with the Vedic gods like Indra, Varuna, Agni, Surya, Matsya and Varaha most importantly. And furthermore, looking into some of the images of Vishnu, or we can say the avatar of Vishnu. And thirdly, I will be focusing on domination and depiction of Indra. How Indra being depicted and dominated in these anthropomorphic figures, and most importantly followed by the Vishnu, and then later by the non-Vaishnavic deities. And fourth, I will be focusing on the impact and influence of over the centuries and how these human object shape have been changed. And last, I will be looking into the degree of influences on Rigvedic gods other than Indra and Vishnu, which goes back to the second point, where Indra and leaving Indra aside, Varuna, Agni, Surya, and Matsya. So this would be my main focus would be on. So the first is anthropomorphic figures as Indra. So it is very fascinating. If you have seen that image, you can see how his arms has been circled around, and the way his legs are. So it's a very masculine body. As we all know, the Rigveda depicts a masculine. Rigveda does talks about Varuna, Indra as a masculine body with which shows with a shoulder, carved long legs, and a straddled legs, and which eventually shows how powerful and beautiful he was. And apart from that, you can also see the vertical marks. I don't know if you can see, they have a vertical marks on it. So this depicts, because we all know Indra was meant for rain. So that's why he was also known as the Meghadipati. So that's why there are some vertical lines which is on the anthropomorphic figures to note that it's like it's something which is related to rain. And it also have a harpoon. I don't know if you can see, because I got an image from the National Museum. So it's little blurry. So it also have a harpoon which can be denoted as a Vajra or an Ankusha. And we can also see in the later images that the influence of Vaishnava iconography taking its root from this Indra objects, because of the fact that first the rise of Vaishnavism over Indra and successful transmission. Now we have, this is very clear, anthropomorphic figures as Varuna. Like, this is the anthropomorphic figure, it's an object, and you can see on the top there is a chatra, which is known as Varuna Abhoga, which is an umbrella. And Varuna is known for ocean and the sea, or ocean or river. So there are horizontal lines in this. Now we had vertical lines over there. Now we have here horizontal lines which represent the flow of water, and at the bottom we have another line which depicts the raindrops. So this is one of the key interesting things to know. And we can also see it is basically similar to Varuna, the Indra, and because they both control water, rain, and fertility, and they do have a power. Next. Now we have Agni. This is also very interesting. If you can see the hands of the anthropomorphic figures, it's like it's widened, because we all know Agni flows like a widened way. So it's a widened one because it's flowing all around. And the most interesting is you find a zigzag line. We had vertical lines, we had horizontal line, now we have the zigzag line. So it is the flame. And another case, how it is very different is, it has a short leg. So because now there is no power, that power which Indra and Varuna have. So it's like basic having a very short leg and with a boot. Simply we can say, like even though we can also see this in the Surya, same kind, but with some differences. Like now we can see this anthropomorphic figure is being portrayed as luminous, like it's been bright. So it's like it's the sun. And now we had zigzag line. Now we have a wavy line here. So it is very different, and that's why we assume it has been assumed by the historians that it is being portrayed as a Surya, and again you can see the legs are being covered. Now we have Matsya. So Matsya, I do just only got one picture of this, and it is from one of the directors of ASI. So this is basically, we find two kinds of Matsya. One is a fish or an anthropomorphic figure, because we have just got this, I can't explain this because on the others we have forearm and up on the upper part, and we have what you call the fins of the fish and the lower portion of the fish. Now, just coming back to the what my main focus is on the Varaha and Vaishnavism. Since we all know Varaha is one of the avatar of Vishnu, so now I just want to focus on one of the most important object, which is the this Varaha itself. So as we all know, the Naravaraha then transformed into Varaha, and the debates has been still continuing with lot of professors are still looking into this matter. Like one of the most prominent who is working on this is S.K. Manjur. He is also the director of Archaeological Institute Museum. And Professor Gonda and UP Star has also been making an indication that Varaha was one of the deity which existed in Rig Veda or even before the Rig Veda, Vedic period, and it has been equated to boar. Why we have a boar? I don't know what you call boar in Malayalam. So it's a boar, and I have just an image of this and the next slide. I'll let you know what exactly looks like a boar. And we also we have lots of god deities which is in the form of boar, like the Maruts, Rudra and Vartas, etc. And then boar was lastly transformed into Prajapati. So these anthropomorphic figures, like what we have seen from the beginning to now, has been just in a case like Indra's figure being given a blurry significance evidences and the emergence of Vaishnavism towards the Vaishnavism. And the most important, which I just wanted to focus on, the arms of the what do you call akimbos. I don't know if anyone of you remember, akimbo is just like hands on the hips and elbow turned outside. So this was one of my key focus. So this is just a Varaha, Naravaraha, because we can see the head, it's like a boar. And the most important, why this is very important is because of the fact that it does have an alphabets of Brahmi. This is just the translation of this. This is Sa and this the Nga. So this is just and we know how long the Brahmi do exist. So it was during the Ashokan period when the Brahmi was most popular. Now I just want to conclude. So what were my observations? Since we have seen the anthropomorphic figures and we have seen the arms. Arms being very most importantly was one of the most important depictions. So it's like absence or presence of these arms in the akimbos just represented an understanding and the depiction background. It's just led to the understanding of what kind of god it was. And then the akimbo upshots had a great influence. Like in the case of, even if you go back to the Harappan civilization, we do have objects which have arms. And next, which is I just want to focus on third, since these kinds of arms that I'm talking about is also being reflected later on, which is in the Kushana period, and then in the Nagarjuna, which is in the Sanchi, and later on in the Bodhisattva. So it's like just we are moving from the so-called copper hoard objects to the Vaishnavism. And the next, which is most important, is that these anthropomorphic figures are very simple. They have a very simple and elegant impressions, which exactly depicts what exactly it should be. So it's like it is depicting the entire nature. So that's what I feel this was about. And the most important, that these kinds of images been later on added to the religious images, particularly to the Mathura regions, with regard to the late period, had defined influence by the spell over the copper anthropomorphic imageries. It was not the sole direct of the Buddhist art that has been influenced in the lingering inspirations of the copper anthropomorphic figures, and it continued Vaishnavism art, and there are countless illustrations of Vaishnava art being influenced by the Buddhists as well. So that's it. Thank you. Now we can have questions. If you got any questions, so be nice.
Doubts or queries.
I'm really sorry I took long. So, if any questions or any suggestions or yeah, sure.
Dr. Curiosity, I'm asking, what made you to take this particular topic for a presentation?
Actually, this was one of my key area since I'm a research scholar working on interregionality and evolution of Western Deccan. So I'm basically looking into the artifacts, so like pottery, coins, and this is one of my paper which has been shortlisted somewhere else, but I wasn't not able to present it over there. So I got this opportunity to do it on Kerala History Congress, and most importantly, this hasn't been researched so far. Since we have found Brahmi characters in these objects, it has been only been keynoted by Manjul and one of his friend, which is D.P. Agrawal, who was these are the only 2 or 3 keynote people who are working on these things. So it would be very interesting if one of us should work on this area and let it us know how Vaishnava art has been influenced on these objects. So that's why I took this, and I guess we need to work on this. So like if I can influence anyone, so.
You have referred to certain arguments made by certain scholars. There's something like a hypothetical deductive method, understanding this kind of illustrations, or what you call medieval remnants, which portray a kind of what you call certain, as you said, interreligious, certain ritualistic practices, or certain motifs in that sense. So what is that's one thing. I'm not a specialist in this area. It's not my business to ask you a question, because you are a scholar in this area. As simple doubt I'm asking. So what kind of a method that you follow? Because you refer to certain scholars and their arguments or assumptions in that sense. And in what way your work differs from the perceptual moralities of the persons whom you refer to? I wish to know the methodology, because these kind of work are very important in the sense that understanding India from a very different terrain.
Exactly.
I hope especially from the present context of looking at things in that sense. What is your?
So first of all, when I was looking, I just read these scholars. They are making these kinds of statements. So actually, I just want to give an example. For instance, we have a stone. It looks like I just don't want to say it right now, but it looks like a Shivalinga. So what archaeologists do is we make a preset imaginations, like we actually like to focus on the contemporary period, and then what exactly exists during the contemporary period, and then on the basis of that we try to look into the past.
Yes.
So it's like if you find an object which is in the shape of Shivalinga, so we connect it with the contemporary period, and then we go back to the past, and then we'll say it's a Shivalinga. So like in the case of D.P. Agrawal, who says it's a boomerang. Why we call it as a boomerang? It's like if you have seen the arms and the legs, it's like if you throw it from the front, and you'll get it backwards. So it can be possible that during the Neolithic period or even after that, these people have used these objects to just kill animals. So this has one of the so again, then another scholar emerged who says it's a weapon.
Yeah.
So this way it comes to an end. So, and about my research, I am not looking into the usage of this. I am just particularly focusing on what kind of influence on and by the Vedic gods and goddesses that has been impacted this particular object. Because as we have seen, the lots of examples are there. So it's like we all know that nothing can happen in a vacuum. So there must be some purpose of these lines and these horizontal, vertical, wavy or zigzag lines. So I'm just trying to connect all these stuffs into the Rigvedic gods and goddesses. So that's what I have done.
Yeah, and also the ecological signification you refer to Rhino and there is an ecological signification.
Yeah.
So which you refer to, I think that can be worked.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very
Yes.
important thing. So many type of things are lying. Because
Yeah,
more
exactly.
than using the archaeology, as you know, projecting certain belief systems, something like that, you can also go to use this as
The lines are drawn either as vertical or horizontal. which
Yeah, it
indicates-
should be some purposeful.
Purposeful.
Because there would be no object if you draw only a one line again and again. But it's like we have an horizontal, then next we have a vertical, then we have a zigzag, and then we have a wavy. So that might be some purpose. So I'm just connecting that these
Yeah.
lines into these deities. That was
Yes,
that.
it is very interesting to see the way in which you are presenting all these. It is my, it is my feeling is that this must have been a pre-Vedic, practice or something.
Yeah, actually it's a pre-Vedic. And then
what's the process through which it had been incorporated into the Vedic pantheons? That has to be
Yeah.
taken into account seriously.
yeah, look into that.
Because the cow, for example, but cow is not cow is a very important kind of an artifact, kind of representation. Instead of cow, they actually made use of this type of boar and other things. And they become part of the Vaishnavite, pantheonic or anthropomorphic kind of artifacts. That has to be looked into. Anyway, this is a very interesting and informative paper. I
Yeah.
congratulate you
Thank you.
for having done it.
Nice.
I am not an expert in this field.
No, but still, sir, if you have any queries, you can ask. There's no issues.
I am only a Actually, yes.